Dear Groypers, let's talk, man to man, because you need to hear this. Not from someone trying to score points or go viral, but from someone who actually cares about where you end up. You've been told you're part of something bigger, that you found a tribe of men who see through the lies, who reject the modern world, who stand for faith, truth, and order. That's the pitch, right? That's what pulled you in. But here's the truth. You're being lied to. You're being used by a group of men who don't want to build anything. They just want to destroy. You've mistaken anger for conviction, cynicism for intelligence, and isolation for strength. But the men leading this so-called movement, your influencers, your online philosophers, they aren't building homes. They aren't building communities. And they certainly aren't building families. They mock the very thing that built civilization, the nuclear family. And they do it under the banner of faith. They preach about masculinity, but don't protect, provide, or commit. They'll talk about virtue, then degrade women. They'll call for tradition, but their lives look nothing like their traditions they claim to defend. Faith isn't something you tweet about. It's something you live. And living it means walking humbly before God, honoring women as partners, raising children in truth, and serving something greater than yourself. That's what men of faith do. That's what builders do. But your leaders? They're phony. Why are you allowing this? You wouldn't let a football coach teach you how to play baseball, so why are you letting boys teach you how to be men? Why are you following men who've never led anything real? Not a family, not a household, not even themselves. Why are you giving your loyalty to people who never built a thing in their lives? Ask yourself this. What's the succession plan for your movement? What happens in 20 years when the men you follow have no sons, no daughters, no legacy, no family dinners, no Sunday morning spent teaching their kids to pray? Who carries the torch when no one has passed it on? The answer is no one, because a movement without families dies in one generation. See, I can tell you this as someone who's lived on both sides, the single man chasing ambition and the husband and father building a legacy. And I'll tell you, after my faith, the most rewarding thing I've ever done is raise my family, my wife, and my kids. They are my mission. They're the reason I get up in the morning, the reason I fight, the reason I care about what kind of country we leave behind. If your leaders tell you that marriage is a trap, that women are the enemy, that family life is weakness, run. Because that's not a movement of men. That's a cult of cowards. Real men don't run from responsibility. They embrace it. They don't sneer at love. They protect it. They don't chase temporary thrills. They plant roots. And if you think that being a man is about being dominant, cold, or detached, you've bought into the same lies as the left, just wrapped in a different slogan. True strength is service. True leadership is sacrifice. True masculinity is the ability to control your impulses, discipline your desires, and love fiercely the people entrusted to your care. You've been told the world is lost, that all hope is gone, that society is too broken to save. That's convenient, isn't it? It lets you off the hook. Because if it's all hopeless, you don't have to build anything. You don't even have to try. But that's a lie straight from hell. The same lie every fallen empire tells itself right before it collapses. Our ancestors didn't quit when the odds were bad. They didn't sit around on live streams complaining about how women dress or how modern life is unfair. They worked. They fought. They built families, churches, schools, businesses. They left something for you. And the question is whether you'll leave something for everyone else. You want to be countercultural? Then get married. Be faithful. Raise kids. Read your Bible. Work hard. Love your country. Serve your neighbor. That's rebellion in a culture that worships itself and despises discipline. That's the kind of man who changes the world, not the kind who hides behind irony and outrage. And I get it. Some of you are hurt. You feel invisible. You feel betrayed by institutions that used to guide you, churches that got soft, politicians who lied, teachers who mocked your values. You have every reason to be angry, but don't let that anger turn you into the very thing you despise. Don't let bitterness steal your future. You've got time to turn around, to stop following the men who profit off your despair, the ones who preach hopelessness because it keeps you watching, the ones who tell you to tear everything down while they live off the chaos. They aren't your brothers. They're your captors. You want to know what real faith looks like? It looks like a father holding his newborn in the middle of the night, praying for strength. It looks like a husband working 2 jobs to put food on the table. It looks like a man on his knees asking God to make him better than he was yesterday. You want to build a movement that lasts? Then start at home. Build a family, build a life, build a faith that doesn't just survive online, but thrives in the real world. Because this country doesn't need more loud voices. It needs more strong fathers, faithful husbands, and men who will choose creation over destruction. So, dear Groypers, it's time to grow up. It's time to lead. You can keep following false prophets who promise power but deliver emptiness, or you can choose something real, something that outlives you. Stop tearing down. Start building. The fight for the future belongs to those who actually have one, and it's up to you. What a gift.
Probably the most annoying part of the current political revolution is the pathetically ignorant condescension coming from these millennial and Gen X fake tough guys. Despite the exhaustive explanations given by the dissident faction of the right, these people critiquing the movement are either too lazy or too stupid to ever look into the actual arguments. They don't even have the sophistication to intentionally strawman us. It's always done by accident. After seeing just a few clips on Twitter, they take their best guess as to what our broad views might be. And once they've set up a complete falsehood for what we believe, they offer the same ineffectual prescription that they would give for everything else. This dork with his bald head, performative beard, and tight button-up shirt desperately tries to conjure up all the dominant energy he can while giving the camera his most convincing drama kid stare. He then goes on to spout the most feminine, toothless nagging imaginable, all under the declaration that he's a big tough guy who's graciously decided it's time to call us all into his office and give us a talking to, man to man. He scolds the target audience as having let boys teach them how to be men. He says true manhood is a strict devotion to family supplemented by a strong faith. But what exposes his absurd ignorance is that we don't even disagree about the importance of what he says. The issue is that trying to persuade right-wing men that those things should be their highest value presumes conditions for a society that no longer exists, and it disregards the urgency of the current moment. This dweeb is most fundamentally telling you to cook a meal with ingredients that you don't have, can't get, and wouldn't have time to eat anyway. He tells you real men don't call marriage a scam. Again, the ignorance. Why don't you first look at the laws that govern marriage and then argue why a man should enter into that legal trap willingly? He says real men don't sneer at love. Who is doing this? These people haven't even heard the arguments. Why don't you investigate the mindset of the average modern woman, address the insane political divide between Gen Z men and women, and then offer some type of resolution for it? Dismissing the issues facing the youth as some triviality and that we should just suck it up and take it all further exposes the uselessness of these idiots. This guy then proclaims that true strength is service and sacrifice. Yes, we agree that is important, but we also believe that those who have legitimate strength should, by extension, be victorious. Strong men don't usually lose to weak men, but we're wondering why we don't see a link between these promoted behaviors and broad victory. The men doing this stuff aren't winning. What we've actually seen is that for the last 80 years, the white men of America's past have all mostly done exclusively what this guy advises, and yet it's all culminated in the cession of our country to both the Longhouse and foreigners. Those men have lost our nation by their actions. So how exactly can this type of behavior be the definitive example of real masculinity that you insist it is? In fact, I would say that we can justifiably lay the blame for our current societal state almost entirely at the hands of those very cowards who were determined to put their heads in the sand and relent to the will of the feminine as you instruct. Those men either helped cause it or were too weak to prevent it. Either way, they are responsible for where we are. And so once again, if the rule you followed brought you to this, of what use was the rule? That is our question, and you offer no argument. These tirades are always insistent on adhering to specific means, but they never even address the ends. We have been fed so much nonsense about procedure and principles while only ever seeing disastrous societal outcomes. And then we're told to just double down, keep at it, and ignore all the massive problems. And because of this objective failure, we're done listening to these platitudes. We want to see success. And so we have been left with no other choice but to assess the validity of ideas purely based on the outcomes they cause. Spare us your beautiful theories, because no matter how abstractly compelling, the prescription this man offers here does not alone produce societal success. That much is clear. And rather than give any type of broad directive for achieving structural change, this message tells you to essentially opt out of the system. Go become a devoted husband, Value your family and self-improvement above all else. And the fact that this is the singular instruction really exemplifies the true weakness that we see in so many older men. And despite this dork's incorrect insistence, we don't assess the weakness of these men based on whether or not they're married with children. And we also don't venerate vapid womanizing while denigrating familial devotion. That's just another embarrassingly lazy misconception from this idiot. What lets us identify the fraudulent masculinity of these men is the fact that they are never willing to take the last, most essential step of saying, actually, I won't put up with this shit. And whatever the consequences for that are, so be it.
The reason we have free speech is because at pivotal stages throughout human history, Christian white men mostly have decided that yes, actually, it would be worth dying to prove a point.
Because that is where the true bravery would lie. If they were willing to stand on principle regardless of the repercussions. True bravery is not routine commitment to family and faith, as noble as that may be on its own. It is not the apex of courage, and you don't get to lie about reality and tell us that it is just because you decided that's how you'd like it to be. You are trying to redefine strength based on what you want it to be, and not by how it actually works in the world. Our true frustration is that while these frauds declare their definition of manhood to be the purest form of masculinity, we have to watch as they continually cower when it's time to make that stand. Kevin Roberts is probably a devoted husband and father. I'm sure he prays and I'm sure he goes to church. But his pathetic apology video tells us with no ambiguity that he is ultimately a coward, because these men are, and will remain, perpetually deferential to the system. And because they're afraid, they'll always turn their back and run from the bully in front of them. But they'll pretend that they made their noble choice to walk away from the fight because they decided it wasn't actually worth it. And they'll call themselves the bigger man for it. We find this same behavior in men like Jordan Peterson and Joe Rogan. And that's fine, until they go around declaring that they are some moral authority. Because the issue is not with what these men say in their basic messages usually. They're all good players, but the sad truth is that they don't want the ball in the fourth quarter, and you can't be great without that trait, and we are in the fourth quarter. They like to wear the armor, but they don't want to fight. These are the same type of men who forgive others with no repentance from their perpetrator. They seem to enjoy submission, because when the pressure really comes, they always tap out, and they justify their weakness as some form of noble passivity. But it's not noble, it's pathetic. And Gen Z is so angry about this because while we have to constantly hear these wimpy, patronizing pleas, we know that we will ultimately be the ones that have to deal with fixing everything because you people are still too afraid to be mean to other people. But I guess I'll ask these men directly, for all this talk about devoting yourself to your family, have you reflected on the type of world you'll be leaving for your children and grandchildren if you continue to walk away and let society fall to these forces? What if it was your daughter on the train who got stabbed to death? What then? But they don't ever consider that, because it would so obviously destroy their entire passive argument. The most blatantly ignorant presumption made in this monologue, though, is the implied catalyst for America First support among the youth. He somehow thinks it's a juvenile attempt to be countercultural. He tells you defiantly that in this climate, it's actually countercultural to get married, be faithful, raise kids, and read the Bible. It's legitimately stunning to me that these people don't get it. No, dumbass, we don't want to be countercultural and edgy. We aren't looking for our generation's version of a punk concert. We legitimately, sincerely, just want our country back. That is all. Our country was stolen from us, and it's you and other men like you that have let it happen. And now you people tell us to ignore it or blindly trust and follow the same men who allowed it to be taken from us in the first place. But we won't do that. And I also don't want to hear, if you go and spend time in the real world, you'll forget about all this internet political stuff. Well, that message may have worked 15 years ago, but you should go outside today. Go to a park in a major US city. There will be roving bands of Middle Eastern teenage boys, Hispanic or Asian families wandering around that speak no English, homeless zombies openly doing drugs, and it'll all be against a backdrop of trash and filth. And that corner store beside the park will be selling a Red Bull for $5. I would love to be exaggerating, but this was my very experience yesterday. Our country has fallen to the tragedy of the commons, and the mindset preached by this guy is the very thing that caused it and will continue to make it worse. But we simply will not accept this impotent submission disguised as honorable familial isolationism. This loser asserts that this country doesn't need more loud voices, it needs strong fathers. No, actually, it is most importantly in need of men who are willing to use power. It needs a Bukele, it needs a Caesar. That is the truth of what our nation needs, if we want to get it back at all. Faith, fatherhood, and familial devotion is great, but until we can return order to society, it's entirely ineffectual to the system at large. And this promotion of societal avoidance is either outright subversive or indicative that you are truly just stupid. We do not care if you ever see us as being real men. We certainly do not see you as one. We don't respect you in the slightest. And we will continue to instead listen to the very people you hate because they at least properly diagnose the issues and want to solve the problems. Their directive is not to just put your head down, work hard, and bring flowers to your wife. You, along with every other one of these dipshit con ink charlatans, continues to show yourselves to be nothing more than beautiful losers. Your advice is completely out of touch boomer slop that would solidify our defeat if exclusively followed. But despite the failure of the instruction you give, you all still sit there proudly because it makes you feel superior and above it all to tell people to just toughen up and ignore it. But do you seriously think it would have been good and productive to advise the young men of Russia in the 1930s to become devoted fathers and block out all the political noise? What about when they're taken off to the gulag for 10 years? Or do you instead think that correcting the system would have been a better directive, regardless of the difficulty? With essentially no functional technology, Stalin was able to rule the entirety of the USSR with an iron fist. What do you think leftist tyrants could do if they were to take true power? You won't be safe out on your rural family compound, no matter how many guns you have and no matter how much you love your wife and children. There is no longer any excuse for this apathy to power you people so often espouse. The only way forward is victory. We aren't trying to burn it all down as you suggest. We're trying to win, and you are trying to honorably lose. So figure out what time it actually is and stop pumping out self-righteous, defeatist, feminist nonsense. We will no longer turn our backs to the bullies like you all have done so many times. I feel sorry for your children that this is their father. We reject you and your pathetic message outright.